Look, I'm seeing online a lot of you nerds complain about how these game key cards are ruining gaming, but to be realistic, this sort of idea has been around way before Nintendo, and I'm not sure why there's such a massive uproar over this.
But me thinks that when you spend over $100 on a physical game, that you should have the full game inside the cartridge.
Well, times change, nerd. Anyways, in this video, I'm going to go over why game key cards aren't a terrible idea, and in my opinion, yes, I would love to have every single thing contained to a single card or disc or whatever you call it, but unfortunately that's not the reality of what's happening in gaming currently, and I think this idea and this standardization from Nintendo is actually something that more people should embrace. So before I get deep into why I think game key cards are actually a great idea, I want to talk about something, and this is a game that I purchased for the Switch a couple of years ago before I was going to travel to Las Vegas, and I wanted to revisit a classic on my Switch. And I ended up picking up this game, and pretty much a day before the flight, I opened it up, and it's Resident Evil Origins Collection for the Switch. And I was excited to get back into Resident Evil 1. However, I was expecting that, I put the game cartridge into the Switch, load it up, and maybe I have to download one of the games, whatever, that's fine. But here's what you ended up getting in this package. If you look inside, you were given a physical copy of Resident Evil 0 and a download code for Resident Evil. Now, whatever, I downloaded it, put it on my Switch, played it on my flight. The problem, though, is this. This game, at this point, I have multiple copies of Resident Evil, multiple ways to play it. I'm not planning on trading this game in, but this game pretty much lost all pieces of value once I put that code in. This code can't be used on someone else's Switch, can't be shared with anyone else. It's unique to my Nintendo account, essentially. Now, Resident Evil 0, absolutely, but you lost essentially one half of this package, and I think at the time I spent $50 on this, which for a game that there's 3,000 ways to play it, it's pretty expensive. And this was a theme that I saw repeated throughout the Nintendo Switch's life cycle, and something that didn't necessarily sit well with me because not every single game that I want to hold on to. For example, I have the Wolfenstein, the Old Blood for the Nintendo Switch. I bought that on like a Boxing Day sale. Didn't run well on the Switch, but long story short, all that was a download code. That game has zero resale value because it's unique to my Switch. There's not even a game cartridge in the case, it's just a code. And this was something that I thought was incredibly silly coming from these developers and publishers for the Nintendo Switch, and I get that there's probably cost associated with the physical media. I completely understand that. But on Xbox, unless you were buying like a DLC pack or something, I don't recall any game that I had where 90% of my title or 50% of my title was tied to a download code card. Instead, I had the actual physical disc, which served as almost like a pass to playing the game, which is essentially what Nintendo's introducing. This isn't a new concept. If I'm not mistaken, almost every single Call of Duty title I've purchased, like over 50% of the game is something you have to download. It's not on the disc. Most of the Assassin's Creed games, as I recall, most of them you had to download. Half the game wasn't even on the disc. So this isn't a new concept. It's a new concept for the way Nintendo's pushing it, but it's not a new concept overall, and I think this sort of uproar over this approach to me is silly. I am absolutely okay with the fact that after I beat Yakuza 0, I may end up trading this game. I've done that with many games that I don't consider like mainline titles I'm going to hold on to forever. But I have the opportunity to do so because this game here has a game keycard feature, which means that yes, I had to download the whole thing off of the Nintendo shop or however you call it, but I can still give this game card to someone else. They can go and play this as if they have the full game. Whether I'm downloading it, whether it's on the cartridge, to me isn't entirely relevant. Unfortunately, the way gaming has gone, a lot of these titles, even if they tried to put the full game on these cartridges, in some cases just won't fit. The same thing happened with physical media and anything. If we want to be upset about something, it should be about the size of game titles, which in a lot of ways, I don't think developers are trying to properly compress and optimize these titles to be smaller, essentially. This isn't the N64 era where we got a 2-disc game like Resident Evil 2 on a 64 megabyte cartridge, right? So that sucks. But you know what? In my opinion, I prefer this. Getting the physical game, having the opportunity to physically trade this game versus having a game that essentially I've lost over 50% of its value purely off of the fact that it was just a fancy box with a download code inside. I myself am a person that if I'm going to be spending, $100 on a game, most cases I'm going to be buying the physical copy. But if I'm buying that physical copy, I want to know that if it's a game that's a one-off single-player experience that was good, but something I'm probably not going to revisit in the near future, I want to be able to have the option to trade it. And I think the game key cards are something that help with this.
But what about preservation? When you don't have it on the physical media, it's very hard to preserve.
Okay, nerd, I get it. I understand the game preservationist approach to this. But here's the thing. People figured out ways to preserve the satellite view Zelda that doesn't even technically exist anymore from way back. So you're telling me that with these fancy things called hard drives, we can't do the same thing with this same type of media? Yes, I understand Nintendo's probably encrypted the shit out of it and made it near impossible, but we still have people ripping Tears of the Kingdom and playing it on their high-end gaming PCs. So I don't see how this is an impossible feat. If anything, the fact that we have to download all this code to all these devices, I guarantee there's a backdoor way to get this preserved to appease that sort of audience. So in my opinion, I think game keycards are actually a positive thing in terms of still having the opportunity to have a physical game and a physical cartridge, but you're able to download it at will and trade the game and share the game and do what you want at that point. And in my opinion, I think this is the happy medium for this approach to gaming.